I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. Congressional leaders from both sides of the aisle will meet with President Trump Tuesday in an effort to head off a looming government shutdown. Current funding ends December 8th. And with Congress so focused on the tax bill, little work has been done on issues surrounding funding. 3 military personnel who traveled with President Trump to Asia have reportedly been reassigned from their jobs at the White House. The Washington Post says they had improper contact with foreign women during the Vietnam leg of the trip. They worked for the White House Communications Agency, providing secure communications for officials. The White House is disputing a claim from a Democratic senator that Trump economic advisor Gary Cohn faked bad reception to get off the phone with the president. Delaware Senator Tom Carper says he was in a meeting with Cohn when it happened. However, the White House says the story is, quote, completely false. Former Bosnian Serb general Ratko Mladic was convicted today of genocide and war crimes for his actions during the Balkan War of the 1990s. Mladic was ejected from the courtroom at The Hague after yelling at judges that everything they say was a lie. He was sentenced to prison. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. This is Bloomberg. I'm Elisa Parenti.
Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, our continued coverage of Uber, the company concealing a massive data breach, then paying hackers to delete the information and keep quiet, how this could impact its efforts around the world. Plus, Russian election meddling on social media. You've seen the ads. Now Facebook wants to tell you which you followed. And one of Facebook's earliest investors sells off almost all of his remaining shares. Why Peter Thiel is selling now. But first to our lead. Uber has been racing from one disaster to the next, leading to boycotts, lawsuits, criminal probes, an executive exodus, and an investor-led mutiny against the co-founder. The appointment of Dara Khosrowshahi as CEO was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter, yet Khosrowshahi continues finding more horrors at every turn. Just yesterday, we broke the news that Uber also concealed a massive 2016 cyber attack that exposed personal data on 57 million customers and drivers globally. Joining us now in New York, Bloomberg Businessweek's Max Chafkin, and here with us in the studio, Bloomberg Tech's Ellen Hewitt. So Ellen, first, you've now got multiple states and federal agencies and agencies around the world launching investigations into this.
Yeah, there's 3 in Europe, multiple states. It sounds like New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman is on this, maybe the FTC as well. I think we're going to continue to see more states get in on this because it seems like, well, it tends to be regulated at the state level that, you are supposed to disclose breaches like this. And even, Khosrowshahi says they should have disclosed this breach. And so it seems like it's pretty clear they did something wrong and states are going to want to come after them.
Max, one of the most interesting things here is that they actually paid these hackers to cover it up and seem to imply that we can take hackers at their word.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty insane when you step back, and I think it's why people are calling this a cover-up. And I mean, I'm not really sure what else you would call it. The idea of sort of taking these hackers who clearly, not necessarily trustworthy people and trying to, get them to sign something or get them to promise or, double pinky swear that they're not going to give away the data, and then thinking that's enough not to tell your customers. It's really troubling, and I think it raises questions about, just how hard it's going to be for Uber to clean up. And I think when we step back and look at the data breaches we've had, not just at Uber but at other companies over the past year, I mean, it's just very concerning, just from a consumer perspective.
And Ellen, it's not like these were young kids, that this was their first rodeo. Joe Sullivan, the chief security officer who was fired, was chief security officer at Facebook for 5 years.
And a former federal prosecutor. Like, this person, when I talked to security experts yesterday, they all expressed the same feeling, which was, how did someone like Joe Sullivan sign off on this? And it sounds like from, some other outlets are reporting also that it sounds like after this breach was discovered, that maybe Uber tried to package the $100,000 payment under a more above-board bug bounty program. But it really, based on how it was described, it does not sound like it should have been paid out that way.
So a bug bounty program is when a company basically pays outsiders to find hacks or find flaws in their system, right?
Yeah.
Rewards them, essentially.
Right. And it usually happens in that order, rather than someone finding a flaw, coming to you and saying, hey, you need to pay us, otherwise we're going to do bad things with this information, and then getting money. That sounds a little bit more like extortion to me.
Now, Max, SoftBank is poised to invest $10 billion in Uber. We've got sources on both sides saying this isn't going to affect the deal. But you wonder if it could even lower the price of the shares that SoftBank is willing to pay. Right.
Well, what's going on now? So there's the sort of $1 billion investment at Uber's sort of top line valuation, around $70 billion, and then there's this sort of negotiation for another $9 billion worth of shares from existing shareholders. And that number, I think SoftBank has been looking for a discount on that $70 billion valuation. So I think there's no way this doesn't factor in at least a little bit. I mean, the other thing that affects Uber's valuation, if not today, then in the long term, is just this is yet another brand problem, another instance in which the company looks less than trustworthy. Data breaches, especially when you're talking about a company like Uber that knows where you live, basically, where you're going, maybe who you're going with, as well as typical stuff, contact information. That's a lot of information, and already Uber's having to compete pretty fiercely with Lyft in the U.S. and obviously other rivals, outside the U.S. So it's just another part of this really toxic stew that Dara Khosrowshahi has had to confront.
Now, in this particular hack, Uber is saying that they didn't get credit cards, they didn't get trip history data, but then again, at this point, it's difficult to take Uber at its word. You wonder, are there other skeletons in the closet, Ellen?
I think that's probably the question that Dara is asking himself, is like, what else is there for me to find now that I've taken over leadership of this company? And you continue to kind of have the ghost of Travis Kalanick and the decisions and the culture that he built at Uber continuing to have repercussions even after he's no longer CEO.
He's still on the board.
Right. And he continues to be a big presence at the company. I think that's something that obviously investors and people who watch the company closely continue to have concerns about as well. This is probably just another data point in that column.
Max, what does this mean for their global efforts? They've had their license revoked in London. Now you have multiple UK agencies looking into this as well.
Yeah, I mean, as we're learning, Uber's sort of mistakes in one jurisdiction will reverberate around the world. So I think, yeah, it just becomes yet another thing that makes it that much harder for them to negotiate with municipalities. I mean, you have to remember, Uber it's a big global company, and there are these network effects, but each market is its own thing, and politicians are obviously looking to protect customers, or at least looking to attract attention to the effect that they're protecting customers. So yeah, I mean, I'd be worried. I think this makes the London negotiation harder. I think it makes negotiations in places like Brazil that much harder.
Dara Khosrowshahi, Ellen, has apologized. He said, look, I can't make any excuses for this. We are changing the way we do business. At what point do these kinds of surprises stop happening?
It's certainly a statement he's made in many different ways multiple times since taking over. I imagine as time goes on, these things will settle down a little, but I have to imagine that he is worried about the ways that Uber has functioned for the first, 7 years of its life, continuing to complicate his attempt to change its image and its messaging and its business and the way it does, the way it runs its business.
And meantime, Max, Uber still has some investigations open with the federal government around privacy, around some of their other initiatives like Grayball that have also been very questionable.
Yeah, there's so many it's hard to keep count. Now, the one thing to say kind of in the company's defense, or perhaps in the defense of the new management, is that if you take over a company that's full of problems, that has, all of these ongoing investigations, what you want to do is get it out there and get it out there quickly. So if Uber is able to, close this SoftBank deal and then we go, 6, 12 months without hearing another shoe drop, it would be like the 15th shoe to drop. But if this is it, and I mean, it kind of sounds naive to say so, then maybe that's good. I mean, his job at this point is to basically excise, as Ellen put it, the ghost of Travis Kalanick, and so that's the sort of positive. The positive is that they found this and they're dealing with it. You know, it's maybe a year too late, but at least they've told us now.
All right, Max Chafkin of Bloomberg Businessweek, Ellen Hewitt of Bloomberg Tech. Thank you both. Of course, we're going to continue to follow this developing story. Now, developments from another hack in 2016, last year's hack on the Security and Exchange Commission, which likely involved Eastern European criminals. According to people familiar with the matter, intruders may have had access for months to its Edgar database, which houses information that's never meant for public release. The theft of corporate data could have led to illegal trades. Coming up, do you hit the like button on any Russian-sponsored content? Did you during last year's U.S. presidential election? Facebook's getting ready to show you if you did. That is next. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. More optimism around Bitcoin. Fundstrat's Thomas Lee has doubled his price target to $11,500 by the middle of 2018. That's a 40% gain from current levels. The strategist said a pullback earlier this month sets the stage for the surge. Yesterday, hedge fund manager Mike Novogratz projected Bitcoin will end the year at $10,000. Well, it was just a few weeks ago that the world got to see the infamous Russian-linked Facebook accounts during congressional hearings on Russian meddling in the 2016 U.S. election. Well, now Facebook has announced a new tool that says it will show people just which Russian propaganda pages or accounts they followed and liked on the social network. The tool will appear by the end of the year in Facebook's online help center. It is estimated that 150 million were reached by these posts from the Internet Research Agency, the name of the Russian firm believed to be behind them. Still with me to discuss Bloomberg Businessweek's Max Chafkin. So, Max, tell us exactly how this tool will work and how far it goes.
Well, we don't know that much. Kind of a curious announcement. I mean, the day before Thanksgiving, one of the slowest news days of the year, Facebook sort of pops up and says, we're working on a thing that will let you know kind of how you interacted with the Russian propaganda. But based on this very brief blog post, what we think is going to happen is it's going to tell you basically, did you like a sort of Russian Internet Research Agency built ad, or did you follow one of these fake pages, one of these fake activist accounts? The thing that it doesn't do, which I think would be sort of maybe equally interesting, if not more interesting, is allow people to see kind of the ads that were in their feed. So unless you interacted with these ads, which probably most people did not, then you know this is not really going to apply to you. On the other hand, it does give people a window, a bigger window than they had before, into just what this propaganda looked like. So it's a little bit of transparency. I'd say it's not quite, you know, the full open kimono that some in Congress especially might expect or prefer.
What is this Internet Research Agency, this supposedly Russian-linked organization that generated this content? This
is, people call it a troll factory. It's actually probably the best known of these kind of propaganda shops. There have been sort of a lot of media coverage. It's located in St. Petersburg. I actually believe that it has a new name now, but it's basically basically a call center full of people who are highly trained in sort of American, you know, language and culture, who are just, you know, logging onto Facebook every day, trolling people. And I think, you know, so it may not be the only Russian-connected sort of propaganda that went on in the election, but it's the best known one, and it's the one that Facebook has chosen to make disclosures about.
And obviously, Facebook's dealing with a lot of other problems, fake news that is not Russian-related. Also, this big story out of ProPublica about Facebook's advertising discrimination, the ability to not show ads to African Americans and Jewish people and high school moms, single mothers.
Right.
I mean, this is, you know, these issues are very endemic to the way Facebook has been doing business for a very long time. How did they deal with this?
Well, I think the ProPublica story is pretty interesting because ProPublica reported on the fact that it was possible using Facebook's self-service ad platform to create ads that look like they violate federal housing law, which says you can't, sort of have discriminatory ads that don't advertise to certain groups. Facebook, after that story, said, we're fixing this problem. ProPublica went back and found, oops, they haven't fixed it, or they haven't fixed it completely. And so this really just raises, sort of more questions about how much control the company has over its platform. And that's important in the Russia conversation because lawmakers, and I'd say probably, most Americans would like Facebook to come up with a solution to this, to make it easier for them to keep, basically bad stuff off their platform. And it's not clear that they've totally figured it out.
All right, Max, hang on a sec. Sticking with Facebook, billionaire Peter Thiel has sold off 73% of his shares in the company. Thiel, an early investor in Facebook and a member of its board, sold over 160,000 shares for a total of $29 million. This according to a regulatory filing. Joining us now, Tom Metcalf, who covers billionaire workings for Bloomberg. Max Chafkin still with us. So first of all, it's important to note that Peter Thiel sold the vast majority of his Facebook shares right after the IPO in 2012, almost $1 billion worth of stock. So he had very little remaining, and now he sold almost all of that. Tom, what do you make of this?
Well, it's just sort of kind of a reminder of a couple of missteps, I guess. I think in hindsight, I'm pretty sure Peter Thiel wished he'd held on to those shares for a bit longer from the IPO. As I say, he sort of recouped about $1 billion from them, but at current share price, it's closer to $4 billion. So that's a big misstep for him and his investors. And then just in terms of, I guess, just how this looks, he's still a director at Facebook, and he's really whittling down his personal stake to pretty much the bare minimum. It's now at about $11 million, which in the context of a $3 billion personal fortune is interesting. This shouldn't be a surprise to investors. This is all part of his trading plan. But when it comes through, it definitely reminds them, like, hey, why is a sort of a very prominent Facebook investor sort of pulling back at this point?
To top it off, Peter Thiel's role on the Facebook board has been questioned whether he should be on there at all. This is a guy who funded a lawsuit against Gawker. Mark Zuckerberg has come out and said, of course, we want a diversity of opinions on our board. Max, do you think that Peter Thiel's time on the Facebook board could be coming to an end?
I mean, I think that it does have that look, especially because, I think it was last week, Peter Thiel, it was reported that he had stepped away from Y Combinator, which is the, sort of well-known Silicon Valley incubator and investment fund. Kind of looks like, oh, maybe he's backing away from Silicon Valley to focus on Washington, D.C. I mean, one thing I will say, though, is that I think that Peter Thiel is a huge asset to Facebook, because one challenge that Zuckerberg has, that Facebook has, is conveying to everybody that Facebook is kind of a neutral party. And having a Trump supporter, having a guy who, one of the most prominent, endorsers of Donald Trump, at the Republican National Convention, that makes Facebook a little bit controversial, but I think that actually gives Facebook a lot of credibility, especially with people on the right who worry about it. In the wake of the sort of that, there was a news scandal where Facebook was seen to have been pushing down conservative news and opinion. So I think if he does leave the board, I mean, maybe that's in the cards, it would hurt Facebook. It wouldn't be great.
Meantime, Tom, there are some other big sellers here, including Jan Koum, co-founder of WhatsApp, who sold $3 billion in 2017 alone, $3 billion worth of shares? Yeah,
that's $3 billion with a B, and then the year before he sold $4 billion. So that is, when he came on board with Facebook, he got a lot of Facebook stock, and then he's diversifying out. But it's certainly now, I think his fortune is sort of 80% in assets other than Facebook. So he's been a really big seller, and I think the big question in Silicon Valley is, what's he doing with $8 billion of cash, or at least liquid assets? Where's it going?
I certainly want to know the answer to that question. All right, Tom Metcalf and Max Chafkin of Bloomberg, thank you both so much for joining us. Coming up, the man behind beloved animated movies like Toy Story and Moana is the latest to face allegations of harassment. What it means for Disney's Pixar. Next. This is Bloomberg. Now to the latest allegations of a Hollywood power player being accused of misconduct. Another one. John Lasseter, the chief creative officer of Disney's Pixar animation studio, said he's taking a 6-month leave of absence. This amid allegations that he made unwanted advances and contact with numerous women over the years. The allegations were first reported by The Hollywood Reporter. In a memo to staff, Lasseter acknowledged, quote, missteps and painful conversations. This all comes as Pixar releases its latest movie, Coco, just released for the holiday season. It's already the highest grossing movie in the history of Mexico. Joining us now from LA, Bloomberg's Chris Palmieri. So Chris, what did Lasseter actually do here? These reports of unwanted hugs, and many of them.
Yeah, he was known as a hugger. You know, there were reports initially, as mentioned yesterday in The Hollywood Reporter, about an unwanted advance with a woman, touching that people thought was excessive. He admitted to what he said was unwanted hugs and gestures, but he said it was always with benign intent. But also revelations today in a Vanity Fair article just came out about trips to strip clubs and lap dances with Lasseter and Pixar employees. Again, additional references to women who felt uncomfortable in his presence, things he had allegedly said to them. So, his initial statement, seems maybe not to cover everything.
What do you make of the 6-month leave of absence as opposed to being fired, as we have seen happen with many, many other Hollywood players who have been accused of such things?
Yeah, well, Disney definitely seems to be treating John with kid gloves here. They put out a statement saying, they support his decision to take a sabbatical. Again, it's very dramatic from other media companies that have just terminated relationships with people. It sort of speaks to the influence that he's had on the company for the past 15 years. I mean, just, an amazing track record, really not just with Pixar, but reinvigorating all of Disney's animation business and big hits like Frozen. He's a big part of the parks and designing attractions and in consumer products as well. So just an incredibly influential and, until recently kind of beloved man at the company.
So look, what does this mean then for the business?
Well, fortunately, Pixar has a pretty deep bench of talent, quite a lot. They were famous for having this group of directors they called the Brain Trust that would sort of review each other's projects, and many of them have been in place in a while. Many have written and directed some of the company's top films. So it's likely if Lasseter does step down permanently, they could pull someone from there. Although, it might be that they decide to look outside and try to change the culture that's allowed this to happen.
All right, Bloomberg's Chris Palmieri joining us from LA. We'll continue to follow that story. Thanks, Chris. Coming up, a make or break Black Friday. Why the stakes are so high for retailers this holiday weekend. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Here's a check of your first word news. A former doctor for the U.S. gymnastics team has pleaded guilty to 7 counts of criminal sexual conduct. Larry Nassar was accused of molesting the 7 girls, saying it was medical treatment. Since then, more than 100 women, including gold medal winning gymnasts, have come forward with their own stories of abuse. Nassar faces at least 25 years in prison. Roy Moore's campaign for the Alabama Senate has taken another hit. The Washingtonian is reporting that Communications Director John Rogers has left Judge Moore's team amid ongoing sexual harassment accusations. The special election between Moore and Democratic candidate Doug Jones is set for December 12th. Congressman Joe Barton has apologized after a lewd photo of himself and a graphic text message surfaced on the internet. The 68-year-old released a statement today expressing remorse for not using better judgment and letting his constituents down. A spokeswoman for the Texas Republican said he has no plans to resign. French President Emmanuel Macron has denounced the auctioning of migrants in Libya as, quote, a crime against humanity. Recently seen video footage that was broadcast last week on CNN showed migrant men being bid on and sold. France requested the UN Security Council debate on human trafficking, which began Tuesday. Macron said he hopes the debate will produce, quote, concrete action and resolutions. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. here in Washington, 6:30 in the morning in Hong Kong. We are joined by Bloomberg's Sophie Kamarudin with a look at the markets. Sophie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Elisa. It looks like folks in the U.S. are raring to go for Thanksgiving, so U.S. stocks closing a little change. Then handoff then to Asia. Could see a mixed start to the session when you take a look at futures in Australia, just looking fairly flat there, and Japanese markets are offline. But the yen offers a flavor of that risk-off mood, holding gains at a 9-week high against the dollar. And that fell to an October low, the dollar then suffering its biggest drop in over 8 months as the Fed meeting minutes skew to the dovish end of the spectrum as inflation debate persists. The Aussie dollar holding above 76, getting a boost from higher metal prices, and gold holding gains sparked by inflation concerns. And oil, that has regained a 2-year high, with New York crude breaching $58 for the first time since the summer of mid-2015 on falling U.S. stockpiles. In Hong Kong, I'm Sophie Kamarudin. Next up, more with Bloomberg Technology.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Black Friday has always been a boon to retail stores, but given the rise of e-commerce and Amazon and brick and mortar's much publicized troubles, this holiday season could be make or break for some. Bloomberg's Emma Chandra has more.
There's a fair amount of optimism heading into Black Friday, the traditional start of the holiday shopping season here in the U.S. Analysts are pointing to strong economic growth, low unemployment, and skyrocketing consumer confidence as providing good conditions for the American shopper. The expectations are for 3 to 4% sales growth over the holiday season. That could be about $680 billion in sales. Analysts are also pointing to a string of positive earnings results over the past few weeks and saying that a number of retailers are better positioned this year for what their consumers will want in terms of integrating both online and in-store retail. They've also said they've been promoting early to make sure that customers know exactly what they're offering, but there is a double-edged sword when you look at this highly promotional environment. What we see here is that a number of retailers are chasing sales through cutting prices, and that could impact margins further down the line. The other struggle is that for many traditional retailers, they have to provide services both in-store and online in order to compete with the big online or e-commerce retailers like Amazon. And online shopping continues to grow here in the US. It's expected to go up by about 20% this holiday season, accounting for about $100 billion in sales. That's just from e-commerce. Amazon is likely to be the big winner from that. Last year, they took 38% of all e-commerce sales during the holiday season, and that's expected to grow this year. Emma Chandra for Bloomberg News.
All right, Emma Chandra there. Well, as Emma mentioned, retailers are slashing prices, and that could impact their margins further down the line. But the one big winner is e-commerce. Online sales are expected to increase by 20% this season. So what is the fate of retailers as they try to compete with Amazon? Joining us now, Guru Hariharan, CEO of Boomerang Commerce and a former Amazon executive. Guru, always great to have you on the show, especially today of all days.
Nice to be here.
What are we going to see this Black Friday / Cyber Monday when you look at the trends?
Yeah, I think as we're watching the trend, it's very clear that over 50% of sales in the holiday season, it's going to be either online or it's going to be influenced by online. So even if you have a brick and mortar store, that is going to have an influence from online. And if you look at the battlefront, the primary contenders contenders of the battlefront are Amazon and Walmart. That's going to be the big battle. But there are other horses to watch: Target, Best Buy, and Toys R Us. And if you look at, again, going back to how do you win online, how do you win on e-commerce, the primary weapon is going to be pricing, competitive pricing. And we saw Walmart making a massive acquisition, Jet.com, and the crown jewel of that acquisition was its dynamic pricing technology. So how do they deploy that, and how do they become competitive and attract traffic and attract sales is yet to be seen, but that's what we're going to be seeing in the market.
So how do you expect to see these retailers behaving vis-a-vis Amazon?
Yeah, I think Amazon definitely has a leg up in its ability to have the Earth's largest selection, great dynamic pricing, extremely competitive pricing. But as we look at Walmart, they're starting to have that technology as well. And an underdog in this is potentially Target. Not many folks are talking about Target in this holiday season, and we have been looking at Target over the last few years. And in the Boomerang reports that we studied over the holiday season, we saw Target to be not so competitive in 2015 and 2016, but in 2017 they're neck to neck with Amazon. In fact,
terms of prices?
In terms of pricing, yes.
But what about convenience?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is, do you have the right product and do you have the right prices? And beyond that is getting your customers to the store, or delivering making a same-day delivery, or whatever that is going to be. But if you look at Target, their prices being so low and being very competitive with Amazon, they have a fair chance of being the dark horse in this market.
So who do you think the winners are going to be?
It's too early to tell, but we think if I were a betting man, would be betting on either Amazon and, of course, and Target.
And the losers?
I think we are very concerned about Toys R Us's position in this market. They neither have dynamic pricing nor have competitive pricing. They're about 15% higher than Amazon at this point.
What about some of the other brick and mortar retailers like J. Crew, like The Gap, and a lot of these companies that have been having very deep discounts throughout the year?
Yeah, so brick and mortar continues to struggle in this market, and especially people who are going in with brick and mortar first approach, they're definitely struggling at this point in the market. We are seeing very few retailers to be taking advantage of modern technologies to be competitive in e-commerce. They continuously struggle to sort of figure out the balance between e-commerce and stores.
And how do you expect Cyber Monday to compare to Black Friday?
I think Cyber Monday is going to be pretty big this time as versus Black Friday. What we saw over the last 2 years has been the effect of Black Friday has gone away and is starting to become more as a gray November as opposed to being a Black Friday.
So, it's interesting because my strategy is that the best discounts are on Black Friday. Should the people who are thinking about buying on Black Friday wait till Cyber Monday? Yeah,
no, I think the deals are there. It's a very highly promotional market at this point, and whether it's now or whether it's Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you're going to get a good deal.
And how concerned are you about cybersecurity this holiday season? We've obviously seen some incredibly high-profile hack attacks on retailers, whether it's Target or Neiman Marcus in recent years. Do you think that some of these older school retailers now have their cybersecurity strategy under control?
Cybersecurity is going to be front and center, and especially at this point, there's a lot of chatter on Facebook's the data breaches that we're seeing and all that. There's been an increased amount of investment from an IT standpoint that's happened in cybersecurity, but nothing that we have seen in the retail market, which is very atypical of other segments in the industry.
So you think they're still vulnerable?
Yeah, it is. I think that's still yet to be seen. It's still as vulnerable as the other segments.
All right. Guru Hariharan of Boomerang, you are sticking with me.
Thank you.
Well, Mark Cuban tweeted at President Trump earlier today and asked if he knew how big an impact Alibaba has had on the U.S. stock market. 5% of the increase in stock market value and 7.5 times our monthly trade deficit with China has gone to one Chinese company, Cuban said. Alibaba's U.S.-listed shares have almost tripled to above $190 a share since its 2014 IPO, the biggest in U.S. history. Trump has long targeted China for trade practices, but recently softened his stance, citing bad U.S. policy. Trump did not respond to Cuban. Coming up, the battle for voice-activated home assistants heats up. How a grocery store could give Amazon an advantage. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Amazon's use of its Whole Foods brick-and-mortar stores to sell its own hardware could help it edge out the competition. The company is using the grocery stores to help sell the Amazon Echo devices. Not only does the move put the device in front of shoppers every day, the company is hoping it will help leave tech rivals like Google and Apple in the dust. Earlier this week, we learned that Apple's HomePod will be delayed, missing the crucial holiday season this year. Guru Hariharan, CEO of Boomerang Commerce and former Amazon exec, still with us. What do you think about Amazon's strategy to try to sell Echo at Whole Foods? I mean, on one hand, why not? On the other hand, it's not something you would usually buy while you're grocery shopping.
I'm also seeing that Amazon's sort of one step ahead in this, where all of the retailers are starting to think about and starting to nail down their story on omni-channel. Amazon's starting to think about and nail down omnipresence. They're already done with omni-channel, with having entering the e-commerce and the brick-and-mortar landscape. But now, when I think about the presence of Amazon in your homes, all the way from entering my home and I see my Amazon boxes lying on the floor where they have their locks that they introduced, or when I go into a kitchen and start cooking, use the Amazon Dash button, or if I have to order some ingredients, I'm talking to Amazon Alexa. So it's sort of, they're starting to think about how do I capture the mind share of the customer at every point in time, and thus being very omnipresent in the customer's minds.
What do you think about the very big lead that the Echo has on the HomePod?
Amazon definitely has a very big lead, and in fact, it's not just a one-point lead that they have. The lead is from the fact that it's is really going behind the Amazon flywheel. It's fueling the Amazon flywheel in a sense. And Amazon's flywheel has a very key component of traffic generation. And as Amazon's Echo is starting to drive more traffic and add more traffic to Amazon's ecosystems, it's starting to really help Amazon Echo also perform much better and sort of being able to start to drive purchases through it, or and through interactions with customers.
How much traffic is Echo really driving? I mean, the use case seems to really be play music, maybe add a couple of things to the shopping cart, but is it really there yet in terms of really driving transactions?
Well, it's a start, and as if you think about information and want to search information, you think about Google. What Amazon's trying to do here is, if you think about products, they want you to come to Amazon and want to think about Amazon. And so, like everything, it's a small step with a big vision. And Amazon's known for really driving with very iterative models and getting into the market, learning quickly, and starting to drive success.
And do you think that big vision will be realized?
It's too early to tell, although Amazon Echo certainly has a very huge amount of step function ahead and a leapfrog against its near competitors, including Google Home, where Google Home and other competitors, they still have to make a leap in terms of not just the natural language processing and the amount of information that can be provided back and services that can be provided back to the customer. Amazon's figured that out to a large extent, much beyond the other competitors, but also has a big shopping element attached to that.
How optimistic are you about the HomePod, knowing that e-commerce is not a foundational feature of this device? It's really about improving the audio and the listening experience in the home.
Yeah, so I think with looking at Alexa, which is an all-encompassing product where it does audio, it does shopping, and it answers other questions as well. If you're just looking at a device just to play music, that sort of a device may not be as compelling to the customer as an Amazon Alexa.
So holiday shopping. So who wins this holiday shopping season when it comes to the smart speaker?
If you think about the modern retail shelf, it is Amazon Search, and Amazon Search is through mobile, it's through web, it's through Amazon Alexa. So, and that is also feeding into the Amazon Alexa sales. So it's sort of a very good sort of a reinforcing sort of an environment that Amazon is creating in this entire in this market. And I still have my bets on for Amazon Alexa.
All right, just a few hours to go, and we are there at the holiday. Guru Hariharan, CEO of Boomerang, former Amazon executive. Always great to have you here on the show. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Coming up, holiday travel is in full swing, and one company is looking to get you on board with its smart luggage. We'll check in with the founders of the Away bag next. This is Bloomberg. Two-year-old smart luggage company Away credits their success to a meaningful consumer experience, which is why they've made the unique expansion from online to brick-and-mortar stores all over the country. Emma Chandra sat down with the Away founders to discuss this move and their disruption of the $32 billion global luggage industry. Take a listen.
For us, we don't think about retail as just, a box where we can sell suitcases. We think about it as a physical place that provides context around the brand that we're building and the travel stories that we're trying to tell. So if you walk into one of our retail stores, there are travel guidebooks, there are things that you might want to bring with you on your trips, and it's supposed to be a really inspiring place to get you thinking about your next trip. So for us, it's about providing that offline context to our biggest retail store, which is awaytravel.com, and giving our community a place to gather.
Now, your New York store, I believe, just has, it's only 30% is devoted to product. So it's about creating an experience for the customer when they go into the store. What else do you want them to be doing when they come to your store?
Well, we walked in there the other day and people were sitting in the cafe booking flights, looking through travel guidebooks. So, we've created this space for people to really think about travel, and it's extremely rewarding to see that actually happening.
And you've also created a number of different products or channels that work with the Away brand. So there's a podcast, a new magazine, there's a blog. How much are they about just enhancing the experience, and how much do they drive revenue for you?
Well, I think what's been really interesting for us is that we created those channels in order to give us more ways to tell our story. So here, our editorial magazine is all about just people's experiences and stories, and really giving a piece of travel media that we didn't think existed out there. Same thing with our podcast. We have an amazing community and network of travelers, and we were giving them an avenue to tell their stories. So every single thing that we do is just providing context around our products, what they enable you to do, and to inspire people to travel better.
Yeah, our media platforms had two goals around it. One was to really inspire people to travel and support people in how they plan and think about how they're going to explore the world. And then also the media properties themselves are all revenue generating.
Okay, I was thinking, you're both businesswomen. There must be a business reason for having these as well. They've got to be a way of driving sales, or do they create revenue themselves?
The media properties do create revenue themselves.
Okay, and is this something your investors, you've just completed some Series B fundraising, is this something your investors have bought into as well, or are they more interested in just the product?
We've had the same investors since we started our business, and from day one they understood our bigger vision, which was creating a travel lifestyle brand. So from the start we said we're launching with this carry-on, and that is our first source of revenue, but over time we'll expand the physical product line, and we'll expand the product line beyond physical products, and this will become a true 360 travel lifestyle business. So from the start, they knew we were going to move into media, and that would be a revenue generating part of the business.
So that's the plan now. What else is in the future for you? Are you looking to be acquired by someone? Do you eventually want to take this company public? Is there a 5-year goal for you?
So our longer term plan is we want to become the #1 travel brand everywhere in the world. So if anyone is going on a trip and they need anything, whether it's an item or some information, that Away is the first brand they think of. In terms of what that means for our company, we're keeping all doors open of where we are in 5 years, 50 years, 100 years, but
there's a 100-year strategy.
There is a 100-year strategy, and in 5 years, we want to be the #1 travel brand in the world.
Okay, and does that also include things like being able to, book flights through Away and things like that?
There are so many things wrong with the travel experience today, so if there's something that we can fix, we will be working on it someday.
You both met at Warby Parker. That was another company that looked to disrupt what was considered to be a fairly traditional, rather unsexy sector or business. What did you learn from them that helped you when you launched Away?
That's where we learned that a meaningfully different consumer experience can really change the way people see an entire industry. Before Warby Parker, buying eyeglasses wasn't sexy, and before Away, people didn't really care about buying luggage, and both companies are out to change that.
Same for you?
Yeah, I think one thing Warby did a great job of is really redefining thinking about the consumer experience, that it's not just about a product. Your product is critical, of course, but it's about everything with your brand and your business and how you interact with your consumers. And I think this next wave of retail brands, the ones that will be successful, are thinking all about that.
Bloomberg's Emma Chandra there with the founders of Away. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. A reminder, we're live streaming on Twitter. You can check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday weekend. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.